All right, back from Indianapolis at the NFL Combine. The Lightning have won 6 in a row. We got lots to talk about tonight. I got to paint the scene because it was kind of weird up there. So, we're at the Indiana Convention Center where the Combine is essentially. Of course, they work out across the street at Lucas Oil Field as far as the players go. But a lot of interviews, that go on at night between the players and coaches and staff in hotel rooms and things like that. But we came in, this morning was really the first day that coaches and general managers were scheduled to talk. And I don't think this is a coincidence. I don't know. I'm a conspiracy guy, conspiracy guy. But at the same time as Jason Light, which was 11:30, I want to say, also, you have this line of podiums, right? 1 through 8, if you will, risers, if you will, for television and things like that. And it's all live and usually streamed back to the various markets as well as nationally. But you had Jason Light on podium 8, and then way down the other side of the room at the same time was Liam Cohen. And then like in the middle playing referee was John Spytek. I just thought it was really interesting. Like I couldn't go see what Liam was saying, and I didn't know what John was, of course they all left on John and him left on great terms. Jason Light said, "Hey, time heals." This is exactly the same quote that Liam Cohen used, and I at least publicly they've moved on, but it was an interesting dance, and I'm just wondering, what the past 2 ships passing in the night has been like in Indianapolis this week. But having said that,
I was just say, as Jason said, time heals.
Time heals. Well, that's the exact quote that Liam Cohen gave me in Jacksonville. That's the exact phrase he used. So,
well, we know Jason keeps receipts. So,
he keeps receipts. Oh yeah, he's. If you need a receipt, just call Jason. He has one for you.
So he picked that phrase purposely.
Yeah, of course he did. Of course he did, man. It was classic. So I don't know. I asked about whether or not they might have some joint practices. He said they have to see what the schedules are. Which means no, we haven't had a conversation about it. But I'd like to see that. I'd like to see Jacksonville and them go at it a little bit, at least in the preseason. It'd be fun. But we learned a lot. I mean, I'll tell you, it's one thing to speculate, and we've done that. We really haven't talked to Jason about the 2024 season, much less anything else. And I guess we could start there. His takeaway was just that the injuries, was a big deal. And he said, despite not advancing and Washington turned out to be a really good young team that beat them in the playoffs, it was an enjoyable year. I rarely hear him say something like that. And his emphasis was that, the closeness of this team, like it was a fun time to be around. It was a good team to be around. They enjoyed each other. They dug themselves out of a deep hole, seemingly without much trouble. And, I think as a general manager, when you have a very young team, there was the second youngest team in the league, and it's easy to lose sight of that because you have players like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and, some guys that have been around for a long time. And that's kind of the way I felt too, is like, I think they probably should have and could have won a few more games, because they did lose, close games to Kansas City and, some pretty good teams. I think going back, the 2 Atlanta games were the ones that were the outliers that they should not have lost really either time to Kirk Cousins, who's now a backup at best for the Atlanta Falcons. But it was a fun year. Like it wasn't, they made a run as they did the year before, but this one felt, I don't know, more secure, even though they didn't advance as far. And, if not for a couple plays, in that final game against Washington, who knows how far they go, and as you get to this point every year, when you get to February and there's one team sitting up there that's happy. I mean, there's one, right? And that's not the Kansas City Chiefs this year. That's Philadelphia Eagles this year. And, the rest of them all have something to lament and are trying to get better. And that's just sort of where you are in the National Football League. Now, at some point you got to win in Lombardi, and the Bucs have won 2 in their existence, but many teams haven't done that, and some have won none. So, but just looking ahead, and this is what the combine is about, looking at prospects and trying to identify your needs and things like that, they feel pretty good about, I think, where they're at. But having Spy Tech with the Raiders now as a GM, having Liam Cohen, with Jacksonville as the head coach is, and then last year Dave Canales going to Carolina, that's really evidence of winning, of a good product of picking the right offensive coordinators. And, they hope they've done that with Josh Grizzard, but time will tell. I don't think there's any expectation that he's necessarily going to be a head coach next year, but if he is, then that means they had a hell of a year. So, from that standpoint, I think, he said, in some regards, it was a good season, and I think that's evidence of that. I think when your players or sorry, your coaches go someplace else and lead a program, that means you've really done something right. So, um, it was an interesting combination, but a lot of things we talked about, to both Todd Bowles and Jason Light. Probably talk more about Bowles tomorrow, just in the interest of spreading it out a little bit of time here so we can devote more of it. But with respect to Jason, obviously, the combine is, you're there to look at players, to look at prospects and interview them and that sort of thing. And they rely more on the tape than anything else. You get the medicals, and that's very important. But really, it's free agency. It's so close to it that, Jason and other GMs are meeting with agents of players. They're monitoring their health, and it starts with Chris Godwin. And if anything was abundantly clear to me, and I kind of anticipated this anyway, but hearing it from Bowles, from Jason Light, and that is, they want Chris Godwin to be part of this team next year. Like, they're almost at a Mike Evans level, and I don't know that that's surprising necessarily, but the dude is I mean, his ankle was turned the wrong way, and from what I understand, he's still, certainly not able to do any football things. I don't know that he's able to walk straight, without some help or some pain. Somebody told me that he played golf, but he was kind of hobbling around. I don't know if that's true, but he's got a road back, and they, definitely, I guess, would expect him to be ready by the start of the regular season anyway. And it's just what we said. They feel like if anyone's going to battle their way back, or have a chance to be himself again, it's going to be Chris, because no one works harder. He's been through this before, been through worse before. And, the fact of the matter is, when he got injured, he was leading the NFL in receptions and was among the league leaders in touchdowns. And so, that on top of, things you can't put a value on, but the intangibles of what he means, in the locker room. There's Mike Evans, there's Levante David, there's Chris Godwin. Like, there's only a few of these guys, and some of the younger guys now, Tristan Wirfs and some others, are of that same sort of character. And, Baker Mayfield, and they're the ones that lead your team. They're really the ones that set the tone, for all the other players, especially when you have, one of the youngest teams in the league. And as much as anything, that's why they want Godwin back. But I'll tell you, they moved the deadline for the voidable year to cut in, and now it's going to cut in on March 12th, which is the start of the new league year. And so they're kind of running out of time, at least with respect to whether he makes it to free agency or not. And they want to be able to do something with that cap number, which is over $18 million if he doesn't play, just in dead money. So it felt like there was a little bit of urgency on their part to get something done with Chris, but it's also, I think there's going to have to be, in their minds anyway, some consideration for the fact of, hey, this guy's coming off a major injury, and I don't know, that's mostly structure of the contract, whether that's, you get this for so many starts or so many games. You kind of pay as you go rather than guaranteeing all of it. I could be wrong about that, but it seems to me that they're going to want some protection from, a guy maybe not be able to make it all the way back. Are you going to give him 3 years and, $27 million a year. I don't know that contract's out there for him any place. It might be because it's not a good free agent receiver class. But they clearly want him back. And I think, Jason is feeling a little bit of heat with respect to trying to get this deal done. It isn't done, and I think he wants it to be done. And we'll just have to see what happens, by March 12th.
Well, why? I mean, why isn't it done? Is this
I don't know.
The Bucs don't know what they want to spend yet? Is this Chris Godwin is looking for more? Is it?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I don't know. I really can't. I can only speculate. I can't tell you for sure. Like I said, if I had to guess, it's about structure, not maybe value. There's a lot of ways you can say, what's your value? Well, the average of my contract is X. Well, that's if you play all 3 years, right? How is it structured? Like, what's the guarantee? The biggest thing is what's the guarantee? What's the guarantee? Is there something in there about injury? Is there something in there about starts? If he was not injured, he would probably say, I want, I don't know, 2-3 years at nowadays with what receivers are going to make, some of them probably approaching $40 million. I'm not saying he's in that neighborhood, but he's probably north of 24, 25, even though he made 20.5 in his last deal. So, if he thinks he can get that or that's his value, it might be one of those things where, and this is always dangerous, you go, yeah, we just don't agree with that value. You're coming off a serious injury. If you can go prove it to us, you're under no obligation to shop and come back and give us, let us match it. But, sometimes guys they get to free agency and then they come back anyway. That's one way of proving your value is like, all right, go out there and see if that contract's out there for you. I think Jason and them are well aware that the danger of him getting to free agency is that somebody like Liam Cohen, right, in the Jaguars, or like Dave Canales in the Carolina Panthers, or maybe like New England, who has no receivers and more cap room than any team in football. I mean, they can spend all they want to. Maybe one of those teams says, yeah, we'll take a flyer on him. Heck, when he's healthy, he's one of the best receivers in the league. And if that happens, they've probably lost him.
Yeah, I think this is one you don't want to get to free agency because based on the class that's out there,
right?
His production when healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some teams are going to be scared by that, or
yeah.
And my guess is if Chris wants to return, and we know the Bucs based on their comments want him to return,
right?
It's probably structure, length, voidable years, whatever, signing bonus,
right?
Bonus structure. Which also leads me to believe if it's just structure that's holding it up, then they'll probably get a deal done. Usually you can overcome those things.
Right.
Because I don't think you want to let him get – because I think some teams – well, I mean, that's what free agency is. You overpay.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And so some team's going to overpay for a guy like Chris Godwin.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Jason Light, Todd Bowles, and Josh Grizzard are going to want to keep that offense together. You've got the offensive line. You've got the quarterback. You've got Mike Evans. You've got Jalen McMillan rising, but I don't think he's ready to take that number 2 spot yet. Maybe this season he will, but I think you want to keep that offense rolling as best you can. And by signing Chris Godwin, then you can focus your draft and all the other things towards the defense, which is where you need the most help.
Yeah, and I think part of this too, and if you remember last year, they had a bunch of free agents, their own guys, and it started with Mike Evans. And not that Baker was looking to go anywhere, because God knows he's been with enough teams, but he wanted to see them sign Mike Evans. You know what I mean? Like that was damn important to him, right? Because that team looks different without his number one receiver. He probably feels very similarly with Chris, if not in some ways more so. Look, Mike's a Hall of Famer. He's a first ballot, all that stuff, right? 1,000 yards every year. Chris's, curse has been that he's had 2 very significant injuries. I mean, the kind of injuries that, frankly, can end careers. If not end them, certainly make you a different player, right? And it took him a while to battle back from the knee injury. It really did. He wasn't the same guy. They moved him outside when Canales was here to try to preserve him. I think that didn't work. Then last year, I don't know that I've seen him play better. I mean that. I don't know that I've seen him. He certainly didn't have, he's had a high volume of catches. He usually has more catches than Mike. But the way he was playing, the confidence he had, he showed up again in the red zone. He could have had 15 touchdowns last year, you know, and he had battled his way all the way back from the knee thing to where it was no longer into what. If you watch this guy work, like we're only able to go out there, for the stretching and the warm ups, and then we're out there. We're gone after about 20 minutes or so. But even when Chris wasn't playing, when he was out the first time, or even last year, the knee's fine structurally, but he spends a lot of time, more time than most players, getting ready to practice, right? Just preparing his body, the kind of rubber bands, the stretching, the different things he does on the field, just to get himself to practice. What are we talking? We're not talking about a game, man. We're talking about practice, man. I know it's important. And he, is meticulous in his preparation. And what he went through with the 3 knee ligaments, is excruciating, both mentally and physically, and not knowing if you're ever going to be the same guy. He made it back to the top receiver in the league. I mean, he was leading the league in catches, and I think the most yards after catch and things like that. And then boom, you get tackled one day in a game that's over inside of a minute, and your ankle's backwards. Like that. That's a harrowing sight. Like you got to get that out of your mind somehow. And then the fracture in the leg, and I saw him very early on. Remember, there was some ridiculous talk about, well, maybe he could make it back for the Super Bowl. He was never going to make it back for any Super Bowl, right? And I watched him walk into his. This was only a couple weeks later when he, was on crutches and really on a one of those things that you kind of roll those scooters. But it was devastating to see him, that that injured again, for a second time. And but he's a process guy. He's a day by day guy. I mean, look, there's no doubt everybody loves Chris Godwin, but when you stand in front of those guys and hear the way they talk about him, like they really want him back. And I'm sure that there's a part of Chris, like Mike, that's like, you know what, I'd like to be a Buck for life. Like that would be cool, to play my whole career here. He'll be 29, and he's already had, a complete career, and a very good one. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's done pretty much everything he wants to do in the game. But boy, did they make it clear that, he's a big priority. Just as clear to me, and we've talked and I've written about this, is I don't see a pathway for Jordan Whitehead to be on this football team, at least under his current contract. Like, he signed a 2-year deal, $9 million. They only guaranteed the first year, 4.5. There's no guarantees for 2025, but he's on the books for 4.5. And he's still, his injury is just as sort of unknown, maybe more so. And it's non-football. It did not happen on the field. And it's unfortunate. We talked about the accident he was in, and it cost him, a chance to play in the playoff game. Who knows, right? If he becomes a difference maker in that game. I remember, there being touchdown passes over the middle of the field, and in the end zone late in the game, and things like that in the playoffs. But with Jordan, he didn't have a good year. He's not Chris Godwin. He had some good years when they win the Super Bowl. He was supposed to be better coming back from the Jets. He didn't make any plays that were very memorable. No interceptions, very few passes defensed. And so I think with him, they're in a strange place where, his new contract is going to hit the books, the start of the new league year. And I, I don't think they're prepared for him to be on this football team. I think they're going to have to release him. And part of that is that talking to Todd Bowles about their defense and the players they have coming back, it's clear. It was made clear to me, at least in my mind, on Tuesday, that Tyke Smith's going to be a safety. He's going to be a starting safety next year with Antoine Winfield Jr. Think about that dynamic, right? I mean, Tyke Smith is one of their best cover guys, period. Okay. And he's one of their best tacklers. He gets guys on the ground fast. And the problem is for in Tyke's mind is, yeah, but I come off the field when they're not in three wide and, I'm a nickel player. And so I don't get to play every down. Well, he wants to play every down. And frankly, he should be on the field every down because he's one of their best defensive players. So if he moves to safety full time with Antoine Winfield Jr., there's no need for Jordan Whitehead. There's no room on this team for him. You need backup safeties, but you know who they really like? Kayvon Merriweather, who they cut and brought back off a practice squad. And Kayvon ended up playing a lot down the stretch because Winfield was hurt and this and that. And, of course, Jordan didn't play the playoff game. So you kind of have 3 to 4 safeties because Christian Izien can play both nickel and safety. And they're so high on Christian Izien and the way he played. At one point early in the season, he was playing corner for them if he has to. And so if Izien's going to be the nickel and you've got Tyke and Antoine Winfield Jr. at safety, and you got Kayvon Merriweather backing them up, I don't see a place for Jordan Whitehead.
No, I think it's look, if Tyke's going to be your starter, then there's no need to pay Jordan Whitehead that much and to have him on this roster.
Right.
You're 100% correct. Like, if Tyke's your starting safety with Antoine Winfield, then you need to devote those resources somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the salary cap is. I mean, it's not really a zero-sum game in the NFL because it's not a hard cap, but how much resources do you want to devote just to safety when you've got a lot of other issues on that defense?
Yeah, it's still an allocation system, right? It's still an allocation system. Mm-hmm. How much value do you have at certain positions? And many teams that have quarterbacks that are making $60 million a year don't have the money and the resources to buy other players. And the Bucs have a relative bargain at quarterback at, Baker Mayfield at $100 million over 3 years. So that allows them to do stuff with other players. But yeah, I'm with you. I think, just looking forward, these young guys are going to develop more and be better players. You're counting on them. And that's really, when you take a step back, I think when Jason Light and Bowles talks about their team, they think of it in terms of, we have some iconic players that are veterans. And Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, really it starts and maybe ends there in terms of like older guys. And then the rest of the team is young, but Baker Mayfield's in the prime of his career. He's, 30, 31. I guess he's 30 actually. And, you've got some other players that have played, a number of years. Tristan Wirfs, being one. He's gotten his new contract, so he's 5 years in. But really, the balance of the team is very, very young. And so they feel like we're going to be good. We could be good for a while. We've won 4 straight division titles. This is them thinking. And we know that once you get into postseason, anything can happen, and we feel like we could have beaten Washington because we did beat Washington. We feel like we could have been competitive against Philly because we did beat Philly. Now, it was early on. Philly didn't have either receiver. They certainly were playing better at the end of the season, which is the trick. But I think they look at this team and say, look, we got a shot. So, keep those guys together, but also let your young guys grow. And part of that is letting Tyke Smith play safety, keeping him on the field every single down. And it's tough because everybody loves Jordan Whitehead. He's a great guy. I spent some time with him in Jacksonville last year in August. And there was a lot of expectation. There was a story about him and Winfield being reunited, and it just didn't work out. for one reason or another, mostly because both of them were hurt. Both of them were hurt during the year, football wise, and then at the end of the year, of course, Jordan had the accident and terrible timing on his part, right? But just in talking to the Bucs about what they're going to add to this team, and the contributions they got from rookies. I mean, Bucky Irving, wow. It was fun listening to Todd Bowles talk about Bucky because he's like, we drafted the guy in the 4th round, and there was a reason he was a 4th rounder, right? He didn't run a great 40 time. He's not the biggest guy. He's 5'9", arguably 5'10", 195 pounds. But they thought he was going to be their outside guy, Mr. Inside, Mr. Outside. They thought he was going to be the guy, change the pace back, right? 3rd down, throw him the ball, get him on the edge, runs tosses to him, that sort of thing, and then run Rashad inside. Well, you know what it turned out to be? 100% the opposite. Bucky Irving, despite his size, is a much better inside runner than he is. Not that he can't get on the edges, but much better inside because of his vision, because of his explosiveness, and frankly, because of his size. He's able to get down below those 6'6" linemen. He's very difficult to see back there, and he hits the hole so fast that they had to adjust their offense so that he got the bulk of the inside zone runs, and they were running Rashad sort of out to the edges and also throwing him the ball, as more of a 3rd down back would. And so they kind of reversed the roles that they saw them having when the season started, which is interesting. But now they have those roles, and we'll get to Rashad White in a minute and some of the off-field issues going on with him. But, they were able to settle that, and then they still have Sean Tucker, so they feel great about the running back room. And
is that why it took so long for Bucky Irving to become the starter?
Maybe they're trying to. Yeah,
partly they had to change the offense, but partly a first-time play caller that maybe got a little stubborn trying to change it too.
Yeah, I think so. It's a great point. I think that they had a perception of what Bucky was, and he proved to be just the opposite. And there's some, like, I compare him to Warrick Dunn a lot because of the size and the way he finishes runs, and the way it's seemingly no one, even a guy that size rarely takes a direct hit. Like, nobody really got good hits on Warrick, but I think you're right. I think that one of the reasons why he wasn't, the first back out there is they just had a perception that he was going to be more of a 3rd down guy, more of an outside runner, and that the inside zone stuff was going to be Rashad's. And it took a while to say, hey, wait a minute, this guy thrives running inside the tackles, and then he'll bounce it out and he'll go anywhere, cut cross back the field and all that stuff, the crazy runs. But I don't think they knew what they had. I don't think they knew where he was best suited in what kind of scheme. And so I think their perception may have slowed down sort of his ability to take over that job. Now, it's clear to me now he's running back 1. What that means, probably a little more usage. Although I know Skip Pete is plans and will use all 3 of them. Probably needs to find a bigger role.
You want them to use all 3 because you want them to have Bucky Irving fresh.
Yes.
Later in games, later in the season. Like,
Yep.
You need multiple backs.
Yes. In this league, you absolutely do. Unless you're Derrick Henry or you're Saquon Barkley.
Well, Barkley, I mean, even Henry, though, they kind of save him for later in the games, the way that Baltimore ran and called their offense. Like, he wasn't getting 30 carries a game.
No, but he was capable. He was capable.
Yeah. I mean, Saquon Barkley's totally different, and that's,
you just look at their size, and I think think they can handle a heavier load. But yeah, in this league, you need more than a couple. You need more than one back for sure. And so that will always be the case with Skip Pete. He made that abundantly clear to me several times last year, including this year after when we were over there talking to him one day after they hired Josh Grizzard. He's like, look, I've done this everywhere I've been. It's like, okay, cool. I'm not going to challenge you here on it, but but Bucky was one of the top backs, and you think about how long it had been, 2015 since they had a 1,000-yard runner. Now, Jones came close one year, and and for that matter, so did Rashad, was just 10 yards shy of 1,000 yards. So really, we're kind of splitting the atoms here, um, but Bucky got it done as a rookie, first rookie to do it for the Bucs since 2015, and Doug Martin. So yeah, I mean, now you know what he is, and that's the thing about hiring Grizzard, and they talked about that, like, you know, I think the biggest thing for them was they wanted continuity on the offense. They did not want to start over with a new coordinator that was going to bring a new system. So that's why they talked to so many guys with the Rams, et cetera. But in the end, you know, Baker had a big voice in this. That was made obvious by Todd Bowles. That Baker's very comfortable with Josh. Josh had a major role in the offense. He was their third down coordinator, if you will. He's their passing game coordinator. Interestingly, we'll get into more of this tomorrow, but like Bowles said something, and they had a defensive shakeup, and there's reasons for that, and we'll explain more of it down the road. But one of the things that Bowles wanted to do or will do is in the off season, the OTAs in the spring, in the summer with the mandatory mini camps and training camp. Todd Bowles wants to be on the offensive side, not to take over the offense or anything like that, but he wants to help, Josh Grizzard prepare to call plays, right? Because he's never done it at the NFL level, never done it as far as I know ever, and so he kind of wants to be on that side of the ball to help him understand, in live situations in training camp and in OTAs, just get him ready for what it's going to be like in the regular season. So I thought that was interesting. Todd's always trying to evolve. He kind of spent a lot of time in the joint practices in Jacksonville. We'd always see him with the offense. We're like, what are you doing over there? And for at that time he was saying, well, I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to understand the whys about the offense and this and that. So it was more about his development. I think this year when he's over there, it'll be about Josh Grizzard's development. And so he plans on doing that, and he's very comfortable with what they got on defense now with Mike Caldwell coming back to coach the inside linebackers and Larry Foote. And that's where George Edwards, in his new capacity as pass game coordinator on defense, will help Bowles take that off his plate so that in the summer and in the spring, he can do that, and be over there with Josh. I think they've gotten better as a staff. Look, nothing against George Edwards, but man, if you just go by position, outside linebacker was the biggest disappointment on the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a staff, you could say they're better, other than we don't know in the offensive coordinator. And just because Josh Grizzard has not called plays once again,
Yeah, we don't know.
So we'll see how he develops. Now, there is some continuity that he was there last season, and
that helps.
That's different in the last 3 seasons of what they've gone through.
Right.
But I think as a whole on the staff, you could say that, but we just don't know what the offense part is going to be.
I guess the one thing that maybe the Bucs, one of the reasons they felt comfortable with Josh, is that Baker's now at a different level, right, with this offense than any time since he's been here, right? Start out with Dave Canales. Dave had elements of the Rams offense and some of the terminology and things, but Dave didn't have the volume, didn't have the the sort of the answers to the tests where really I think Baker felt he could get out of things as easily as he does now. Liam came in and, without drastically changing the scheme, gave Baker more control of the car, and he was able to quickly identify defenses and get them into plays that at least he knew had a good chance of working. And so now I think Baker's in a position with the same offense, because think about where he's been, right? Like, we know about the 4 teams in 18 months or whatever it was when he got here. But if you think about where he's been and the fact that he's now come through his greatest season, right, statistically, 4,500 passing yards, 41 touchdowns, all of that, 71% completions. he's mastered that part of the offense, the cerebral part. And so he can be an enormous asset to Josh, in game planning. He's at that level now. I mean, he's going to be almost 30 years old, and not to compare him to Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or anything, but these really good quarterbacks become their own coordinator at some point, you know. You'd be nice to have the same coordinator and be able to, get inside each other's minds. But I think Baker's at a point where he's going to be the biggest help to Josh as anybody. Yeah, I mentioned the Lightning 6 in a row. They're red hot right now, even coming out of that break in the middle of the season. And so we'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, hey guys, get on down to Breitling Boutique. It's in International Plaza Mall. You know where that is, the big mall over by the airport, if you will. They're in the center of it, upstairs. And if you want to talk about a great Swiss watchmaker, it's Breitling. The company's been in business for like 44 years. They've been at International Plaza for 5+ years now, and they have the best collection of watches you could hope for. I'm telling you, the customer service is second to none. You're talking about what they're known for, the Navitimers, the Chronomat watches for men. And, this year they've been celebrating the NFL's 104th year anniversary with a special limited, that's the key word, edition of NFL watches for all 32 teams. That's right. They have a watch for all 32 teams. Even if you're not a Bucs fan, maybe you come from out of town, they probably have your team watch that you grew up with. It's got the color of the team in the face of this watch is absolutely gorgeous. The logo. Check it out. You can go on our TampaBay.com. I believe there's an ad with the Buccaneer watch that is pictured. You're going to fall in love with this thing and hope that they still have one left. But in any case, if you go to Breitling Boutique, they're going to hook you up with a timepiece that you can be proud of, and you'll wear it forever. Also, women's watches. This is not just for men. Beautiful women's watches that are durable, as well as lots of different colored wristbands. If your wife or girlfriend is on the go, and she's with the kids and banging around in the car and stuff like that, these watches are going to hold up and look absolutely stunning. So check it out. Go to Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall, and make sure when you do that you let them know that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. All right. How about the red hot Lightning? Break up the Lightning, man. They are on fire. And the biggest difference I see, Steve, is that their defense is rock solid. I mean, they played a team that's kind of been reeling a little bit, scuffling along themselves. But man, the structure looks good. Vassie's been fantastic, and they're playing playoff hockey right now.
Vassie's been absolutely spectacular. No question about that. And Sunday night, as they came off the 2-week break, probably got off to a slow start. Didn't play poorly, but everything wasn't crisp. That's what, after 2 weeks off, that kind of happens. John Cooper talked about J.J. Moser's first game back, and 4 or 5 of the guys from the Four Nations didn't even get to practice with the team leading into that, and everybody was off for 2 weeks, et cetera. That it got off to a slow start, but they played well. They managed to win. Tuesday night against Edmonton, you're right. The team's been scuffling. They lost 3 in a row coming in, but they still have Connor McDavid. They still have Evan Bouchard. They still have Leon Draisaitl. They still have Zach Hyman.
Oh, yeah.
They can put up a lot of goals quickly. The Lightning's defense, that third period was a clinic.
Yeah, they didn't get any shots. Yeah.
I mean, Edmonton's down 3-1. They had 8 shot attempts.
Yeah, attempts, not on goal.
Attempts.
Not on goal. Yeah.
Yes. 8. The Lightning
Connor
put
McDavid
on
and Draisaitl and all those guys, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is the formula the Lightning won Stanley Cups with.
Yeah, it was.
Get a lead, lock it down.
Now, how big is it they got their defenseman back?
Well, J.J. Moser back is huge.
Yeah.
So he's a top 4 defenseman. I mean,
right,
they're top defensive pairs, and you can pick the order, but if you're going purely for defense, it's McDonough, Chernak, and then Hedman, Moser's your other pair. Those are your top 2 pairs.
Right.
You'd miss Moser for 28 games. So basically half of the season you had played so far, he missed.
Yeah.
Getting him back. And, I thought Sunday he played fine. He looked like a guy that missed 28 games.
Yeah, hadn't been in the mix, yeah.
I thought he was better tonight. I think he's going to get better come Thursday night. And, as we go along the next few games, he's going to just get better. It's part of coming back from an injury. I thought Ryan McDonough and Eric Chernak were spectacular.
McDonough was unbelievable. The shots that he blocked, he's playing great. I mean, and then you had a goal from Victor Hedman, which is always nice, a bonus, right? So
yeah, absolutely. But and I said this to some people in the press box, and everyone agrees. But the Lightning play that way in the playoffs most of the time. Like you can win a cup.
Hard to beat, yeah.
If you could play defense like that, and you have Andrei Vasilevsky behind you, like good luck.
Yeah, that's the key. I mean, the big cat is going to carry you no matter what. But then if you can play that way around him, right, and limit the chances that the other, especially when you get a lead. I mean, that we remember those runs to the cup, and it's like if they had a 1-goal lead in the third, it's over. Like you always felt like Mariano Rivera was coming in. Like no one was going to get a good shot on goal. It just wasn't going to happen in the third period. And that's kind of what they remind me of, the way they're playing right now.
Well, and if you remember at the beginning of the year, we talked about some of the struggles in the third period.
Yeah.
Do you realize they've now won 19 straight games when they lead after 2 periods?
I know, it's a great stat. Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah.
Now, early in the year, it wasn't so much an issue of when they led after 2, it was when they were tied after 2. Early in the year, they were struggling to come out with points.
Right.
And they've been better at that too. But yeah, 19 straight games now leading after 2, 26-1-1 this season. When the Lightning won those cups and went to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals.
Yeah.
When they had a lead going to the third period, like you basically, it was like, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
Like they knew how to, what they did so well on Tuesday night. Yes, they played well defensively, but they controlled the puck. They didn't take unnecessary risks, and they played a smart game. Get the puck, chip it out, get it out. Like they didn't get fancy with it. They didn't try to make the razzle-dazzle play. They didn't take unnecessary risk. They had a lead. If something was there, go ahead and push up the ice. Go for it. But if it's not there, just get it out and keep cycling the puck out of your zone. Make Edmonton work 200 feet to get that puck up the ice. And they did a wonderful job of that. That period is probably the best defensive period they've played all year.
Yeah. No, it was. And they, like you said, Edmonton had to go 200 feet and a lot of zone time for Tampa Bay. Not that many shots, much less on goal. It was a clinic. It was really good. And this is only their second game back, since the break in essence. And a lot of those guys played. So no, it looked good. They should, like, if Vassy is being what he's being right now, you give him just a little bit of a chance and he's going to win most of those games. So love the way they're playing. Hopefully they can keep that going. Right now, where are they at in the standings in terms of like playoff positions and stuff like that?
They're in third place in the Atlantic, but they're just 4 points behind Toronto for first and 3 behind Florida for second.
Yeah, I mean
they have 1 game in hand on Toronto and 2 on Florida. So I mean they're right there at the top of the standings.
Right. So I mean not that the goal is to make the postseason and that's the biggest thing, but they could even before this is over improve their position. So
and we talk about that 96-point threshold, and I don't think it's going to take 96 to get to the playoffs this year. It's probably going to be more like 90, 91. But just take that 96 point threshold that we've talked about before.
Right.
The Lightning only need to get 26 points in the next 25 games to hit that.
Oh, wow.
Like most likely they could play 500 hockey the rest of the way and make the playoffs.
And make it, yeah.
That's where they've set themselves up now. I mean, right now they're 13 games above Hockey 500, 33, 20, and 4. And so they're at a point where they don't have to. They can basically win every other game, and they're probably going to make the playoffs. Now, the good thing is you have a shot to win the division this year, and the Lightning don't really care where they finish.
Right.
They don't. But if you take first place, you avoid Toronto or Florida in the first round.
That's huge to me.
You're good, assuming the standings stay as they are. You're going to get a Detroit or Columbus or Ottawa or the Rangers or maybe even Boston. Those are the teams you're going to get in the first round instead of Toronto or Florida. And so I don't think the Lightning, it's not going to be win at all costs, go for the, top of the division. But you're right there right now, like, go for it. Like, it's not a, we're fine where we're at. Like if you can get the number 1 seed in your division, I mean, Washington's going to be number 1 in the East. They're 10 points ahead of Toronto even. But
Yeah.
win your division, you avoid Toronto, Florida most likely for the first round.
Yeah, and the thing about that is, like, I've always thought this too, and whether it's football or baseball or anything, and the Rays have gone down in those 3-game series.
Mm-hmm.
To me, if you can get going in the postseason, right? If you can win that first series,
Yep.
it just lets you exhale. It sets you up for success. You know, the Bucks beating Philadelphia, 2 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, uh, and then taking Detroit to the mat. Like, you get through the first one, man. Now you're playing just to get to one series, and maybe you get to a
Mm-hmm.
conference championship. It just changes things. It just makes you feel like, okay, we're in it to win this thing. If you can just get over that hump, right? And so, yeah, you don't want to be, losing in the first round, and so a better opponent or more favorable opponent, one that you're better than, and if you go out there and execute, you're going to beat. Makes it a little easier than maybe playing the top team in the entire NHL.
Well, and I think hockey more than other sports too. The type of matchup and the team you play, like,
oh yeah,
hockey is so physical in the playoffs. If you play a extremely physical team, like that's harder. Like,
yeah,
you'd rather play a team that's maybe not quite as physical. Hopefully you can get through in 5 or 6 games, not go to 7.
yeah.
Like,
Get some
all
rest.
that matters. All that matters.
Couple days off matter.
Yeah, matchups in hockey matter a lot. I don't think you go, as you get late in the season, trying to get points or drop points just to get a matchup, but a favorable matchup can help go a long way to making it deep in the playoffs because of how physical the playoffs are.
With the way they're playing, if you're Julian Brisebois and the deadline's approaching, do you still try to change this team and add to it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I have no question Julian will make some move. And the deadline's next Friday. So, we're coming up on, 9 days away from the deadline. If you look at Julian Brisebois' track record, outside the year that they won 62 games and scored 128 points, they didn't make a move and got swept out of the playoffs. Ever since then, he's made big moves and bold moves. And I don't think this year's any different. I think the team's playing well right now, but you still have a need for forwards.
Right.
Either you're going to either trade for a top 6 forward to play with Cirelli and Hagel. Like, last year when you added Anthony Duclair, he played on your top 6 basically, and it slotted everyone down into a more natural position.
That's right.
They're trying to figure out, the Sunday night they played Nick Paul with Cirelli and Hagel. On Tuesday night it was Zemgus Girgensons. They're trying to figure out who can play there. I think ultimately Julian's going to try to trade for someone that's going to play on that line. And then Paul and Girgensons and all that can slot into a more natural position in the bottom 6. But I also think that Julian Brisebois is going to try to add 2 or 3 players to this team, not one. Your bottom 6 forwards aren't producing enough overall. And so if you can upgrade 1 or 2 of those guys, then you're going to do it. And he may even look for a defenseman as well. So, we'll see. They've got, I think, like 3 and the cap in hockey is different. It's a hard cap, but you can accumulate cap space all year. So every day the Lightning have not had a lot of backups this season. They don't have a 13th forward on the roster right now.
Right.
And it's because they are saving cap space. Every day that you don't spend that money, it accumulates. And so that right now they've accumulated something like $3.8 million in cap space. You can also have teams take on cap space or take on salary for you and stuff. So, they're not using LTIR money, so they're in a really good position at the trade deadline this year. And they also know the cap is going to go up next year by like $5 or $6 million. And the Lightning really don't have any big contracts to sign next year. So, they could even add some salary if guys have some term left. So I think Julian Brisebois can be very aggressive, and I think he will be.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. And, we're going to get back into, certainly we'll talk more about the Lightning. We get back into the Buccaneers and what Todd Bowles had to say and some of the other things and observations and plans for the season coming up, as well as what he's looking for in the draft. I thought was very interesting. We'll do that tomorrow. Get your mailbag questions in. You can do that. Send them to us online at SportsDayTB. You reach me online at NFL Stroud on X and My email address is rstroud@tampabay.com. Go see our friends at Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Check out the beautiful Chronomat watches, the NFL collection, all of that. Men's, women's watches. Make sure you tell them that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. For Steve Versnick, I am Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.